Well, hello everyone. Cheers. Let me welcome you on Software Testing Beer Online. This is the fourth installment of our online testing meetup. Darryn Downey from Liberty IT. Cheers, and the stage is yours.
Cheers. I couldn't not have a pint of Guinness, right? Give me 2 seconds. Share my screen here. Alrighty, everyone see the screen okay? Don't know why I'm asking.
Yes, we can see.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Is there? Look, we'll figure it out as we go along. Last time I did this talk was in person. I was getting people to put their hands up and stuff. We'll see what happens virtually. It'll be a bit of fun. Alrighty. Okay, cool. Thank you for having me, by the way. It's great to be here. This is me. So I was very excited when I saw that the title of this thing is beer. So I'm a GQ model. If you know the magazine GQ, if you Google worst dressed at Glastonbury Festival 2017, GQ, and scroll to the very end, you'll get this lovely picture of me. It was picked up because I used to help run the Ministry of Testing meetup, and I was wearing their T-shirt. So I guess a little bit about me. I mean, this whole talk, you'll figure out my whole background and how I ended up in testing, how I ended up becoming a delivery lead. I'm not entirely sure what a delivery lead is yet either, so don't worry about it. We'll figure that out. Funny thing about the name Software Testing Beer. So my father's on LinkedIn. He's retired, but he likes to, I don't know, hang out on LinkedIn for some reason. And you guys tagged me Software Testing Beer with my picture, and he was very excited because my father, I mean, I'm drinking Guinness right now, but my dad used to work in Guinnesses, as did his father. And he saw Software Testing Beer. He didn't see software, he just saw testing beer, and he saw my picture, and he sent me a text, and he's like, "You're testing beer now? Oh, wow, fantastic." No, Dad. No, I'm not testing.
Yeah, that's common misconception.
Yeah. But he was really excited, and I was like, no, Dad, I'm not following your footsteps. If I worked in a brewery, I'd be dead by now. But hey, so I guess if you want to follow me on Twitter, at Dar is my Twitter name. I don't tweet very often. I'm pretty bad at it. Thoughtsontesting.wordpress.com is my blog. I'm also pretty bad at that. I used to be really good. In the last year or so, it's just been a nightmare. So I haven't really posted, but I'm planning on, it's a New Year's goal to get back into it, right? So let us kick off then. Alrighty, college. This is where this is going to get a bit interesting, right? So maybe in the chat, if everyone could +1, right? Or is there a hands up function? Is there something like that we could use? I'm not entirely sure. Basically, how many people did computer science in college? Or some sort of computing degree or something like that on this call? Can you like say yes or no in the chat or +1 or something? I'll give it a minute. Nobody? I did. Thank you, Alexandria. Okay, brilliant. All right. And Alexandria, I'm assuming now that you're a tester, right? Yes, no? Me? Okay, cool. So the people that did, you guys are testers. Fantastic. Right. Now, did college teach you anything about testing at all? Anything at all? Very little. There we go. So maybe a bit about unit testing, right? Maybe a little bit, right? But did you learn that software testing was a career? No. Did you learn that software testing was even a role that you could do? No. When I was in college, I wanted to be a software developer. I actually wanted to be a software games developer, but then I did a game stream module in college and realized there's too much maths and I'm not that smart. I really hated it, so I didn't. But hey, in college, we didn't learn anything about software testing, okay? Nothing at all. Maybe a little bit about unit testing, Did we learn anything about the real world in college? No. What were we told to do in college? Write code on your own. Do not share your code with your fellow students because that's cheating. right? So you had to silo yourself. You had to sit in a corner. You had to code all the way on your own. You weren't allowed, I mean, everyone did share code with their fellow students. We ended up doing that, obviously, but you weren't supposed to. You weren't supposed to work together. It was all, you do your project, you do it on your own, right? Except for maybe the odd group project. But for the coding, it was just no pairing, sit in your own, code away. We didn't test code. We hacked it out, put it together, and that was it. So boom, this was me on my first job out of college, okay? I was hired as a test automation engineer, okay? Now, I'm assuming everyone on this call knows what a test automation engineer is. When I was hired as one, I didn't have a clue. I'm like, what's a test automation engineer? I want to be a software developer. What is this job? What's going on? Also, I was terrified because suddenly I was thrown onto a team. I was just out of college. I didn't, know how to work with anybody. I was used to siloing and I was used to hacking my code together. I didn't understand about testing. What my job was, and I'm assuming a couple of people can relate to this. I'm hoping not too many, because this is kind of quite waterfall and it's quite old school. And I'm hoping not too many people still work like this, but maybe they do. So what would happen was manual testers, right, would spend ages writing test cases. And what they'd do is they'd open the website and they'd go, we click the big green button. And when we click the big green button, the page loads and the next page loads and we see the word blah is on the next page. So we click that. Brilliant, fantastic, test passed. They would write out loads and loads and loads of these manual scripts and they'd hand them over to me and my buddy. In fact, actually, just for a bit of context, that guy in the red hat, he also started with me. He was also a test automation engineer, and me and him had to code the test suite. Whoop. My clicker seems to have broken. Great. Can I do it manually? Yes, I can. All right. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So the manual testers would write the test script, and me and this other guy, Gar, we'd automate them, right? So we were in charge of the test suite. We had to make sure that all those tests passed. And yeah, it was coding, so I wasn't too annoyed that I wasn't strictly a software developer, but it was fine, But we were in a little testing silo. We didn't realize at the time that we were in a testing silo, but we were. Right, now, my developer friends call this my dev bashing slide, right? Which is kind of true, okay? So devs always have trouble finding the wall or climbing the wall. They can't even see that there's a door there, right? So this slide is about the invisible wall between software testing and software development that used to exist in a lot of waterfall companies. Still kind of can exist in a lot of Scrum teams, but we can get to that, right? So as I was hired as a test automation engineer, I'd be writing the test code, and the tests might fail. If the tests failed, the developers would blame us, right? They'd come over and they'd be like, your tests failed. They're broken. What have you done? You've ruined everything. We can't do a release because your tests are broken, right? Well, we didn't have any empathy for each other. Do you know what I mean? The developers didn't like me. I didn't like them. The only communication we ever really had was through a tool called Bugzilla. It was a horrible tool. I hope nobody had to use it, but maybe some people did. I don't know. But the key thing there was that there was this invisible wall, and it's invisible because we could just walk through it. At any point during the day, I could have walked over it, but now we sat in separate rooms, testers and developers. But at one point, anytime I wanted to, I could have walked into the developer's room and went, "Hey, buddy, can I sit with you?" But I never did because that wasn't part of our job. We just automated the manual tests and looked after that test suite, right? Now, the test suite was long, took hours to run, was built on Selenium, was built by interns actually at the time, and was just built upon by us juniors. So we didn't know any best practices for coding. We didn't know anything. We were just literally, it was like college again, nearly. We were hacking everything together. Now, the big problem here was that neither the developers or the testers could see the door in the wall. We couldn't realize that, you could just walk through and talk to each other. Haha, my clicker's back working. I'm very happy. So I'm going to give everyone maybe 30 seconds just to read this because I think it's very funny. So what happened to us next? You guessed it. We went to Agile. We went to Scrum, right? We did a 2-day training course. Unlike Pointy Haired Boss, which is just start write code and complaining. Kind of was a bit like that, right? Now, at the time, fresh out of college, it was a revelation. I was like, this is amazing. I can sit and I can talk with the developers. I can see what they're doing all day. They can see what I'm doing all day. We're sitting beside each other. I have a developer to my right, on my left. This was crazy. Usually the developers were just doing this mysterious processy thing in the other room and we didn't know. And the only time they'd come out, as I said earlier, was they'd come out to shout at us when the build went red, right? But I got to learn a bit of empathy now. I got to realize actually they have a tough job too. And they got to realize that, you know, this tool that we're writing, the framework is sloppy, crappy. We don't really know what we're doing. They started realizing, wait a minute, these guys are just kind of juniors out of college who don't really have it. So they kind of stopped shouting at us as much, which is really, really good, you know? So we tried all this new nirvana idea of Scrum and Agile. It was beautiful. We tried it for about maybe 2 weeks. And then old habits crept in. We kind of stopped. All the cool stuff we were trying, the sprint planning, everything, it just kind of stopped. We stopped doing it. We kind of just went back to the old way of working. Because sure, isn't the old way of working fine? And wasn't it better anyway? So at the time, I was like, well, no, this is crap. I wanna go back to the Scrum thing. And I started complaining a lot about it, right? And my manager at the time kind of got really annoyed with me complaining about it all the time. It was basically just, no, automate your test cases and shut up. That's what your job is. You should do, sit in the corner, tester. I don't want you talking. Because I kind of got cheeky then and went, well, how much did all that training cost us? And you paid how much to train us all? Cool, yeah. Are you just burning that money? Because we're not going to use it then. We're not going to use what we've learned. Yeah, I found out that I wasn't passing my probation. Yeah, more power to me, right? So great. Actually, that's kind of a lie. They extended my probation a little bit because they needed a QA to close out a project. But once that was done, once that project was done, I was at the door. Bye. So this was me after my first job out of college, right? So I was jobless. Just moved out of my parents' house. I was really worried, scared, anxious. Imposter syndrome was a big thing. I didn't even know I had it, but I was terrified, right? I knew Agile was kind of a good thing, but because I'd been beaten for trying it, I was like, best not push the boundary on that too often. I'll find a job and I'll just do exactly what they tell me and I won't question anything anymore, okay? But I was also kind of terrified of management because the manager I had in my last job didn't support me, didn't help me grow, didn't train me properly, and would give out to me for trying new ideas. So, right, all that I had learned kind of was that developers and testers should kind of work together, but I was kind of afraid to push that boat just in case I got in trouble, right? Now, I had a vague idea that I was supposed to be empathetic towards other developers and other product owners maybe, and you know, we should work together, but yet again, too afraid to do anything, right? Okay, old Gil, he's got a new job. Hey, humming merrily. I like old Gil in The Simpsons because he's kind of like the ultimate kind of sad losery kind of guy. Because every time he gets a new job, he gets something bad always happens to him. I feel like I kind of relate to him a little bit, and I feel bad for him. But this was me, right? A friend of mine was working in this real cool company. He said, Darren, they're doing some cool things with testing. Come along, stick your CV in, and I got the job. I was so excited, right? But I was also terrified of managers. So I was gonna just keep my head down. Now, years later, the manager that hired me ended up becoming kind of my mentor and a very good friend of mine. But he told me years later that he hired me specifically because I knew nothing. he didn't want someone coming in with a load of testing biases and we need to do X and we need to do Y. He was just like, ha, this guy has a vague idea how to code and he wants to learn. So he hired me on the back of, I want to learn, so he could kind of teach me, right? Which was amazing. And I'm very happy he did. But this place was agile, right? Not just Scrum, they were agile. Now, what does that mean, agile, right? Oh, what were they doing? No bugs, no bugs. My first day, right? I remember, and I was like, cool, testing this software, gonna manually test it, then I was gonna automate tests. This was gonna do, right? Because that's what I needed to do. So I was gonna open the software and manually test, and I turned to the team lead and I just went, found a bug. He's like, great, brilliant, found a bug. It's great, you're a tester, good. It's what you're supposed to do. And I was like, great, where do I raise it? Is Bugzilla? Is there something like JIRA? I mean, where do we raise these bugs? And he kind of laughed at me and he goes, no, we don't have a bug tracking tool. I was like, you don't have a bug tracking tool? How do you track your bugs? I mean, what are you, this is insane. Like, he goes, no, we just fix them as we find them. And then I was like, what? Fix them as you find them? That's insane. Like, what's going on? So what I found out with this agile thing was that testing wasn't just my job. Testing was everybody's job. I sat with the developers. It was something everybody did. The developers were writing test automation. The developers were writing the unit tests. They were using me to help them find the bugs, find the weak spots in the code, and then they'd automate around it and they'd help me automate. And we'd work together, we'd pair. They didn't need a bug tracking tool because if I found a bug, I'd be like, turn to the developer beside me and be like, hey, buddy, hey, look at this bug. And he'd be like, great bug. He'd recreate it on his machine. I'd show him how to do it. And then I'd watch as he fixed it. He'd hit build pipeline again, stick out a new version to dev, fire it over to me and be like, there you go, retest that. Bug fixed, perfect. We didn't need a bug tracking tool. It was an absolute revelation. It was amazing. Right. At this point, when we're in person, usually I like have a t-shirt or a sticky and a prize and I'll throw it out, but I can't do that because we're not here. So I do have a question though, right? There was about 40 developers on the floor, right? How many testers do you think we had for about 40 developers, right? If you want to stick it in the chat there, go on, give it a guess. Ooh, 5, good guess. Anyone else? All right, 5 and 2. Amazing. These are both quite close. It was 3. We had 3 testers, right? So what my job was, right? Oh, yeah. Lucia, if we were in person, I'd be giving you a t-shirt right now. I'm sorry. But so whoop, I have skipped ahead. So because there was no bug tracking tools, my job was to help generate test cases. But it wasn't just writing manual test cases. We were using behavioral driven development. We were using a BDD style approach, you know. Before the devs would write any code, we came up with examples. How is the code going to work? So I'd sit with a developer and the 3 amigos, you know, I'd sit with a developer and I'd sit with the product owner and we'd open a story. We weren't using JIRA, we were using Lean Kit, I think it was called Lean Kit. I don't know, stretching my memory here. I think that was it. But anyway, we'd open up the ticket, the story, and we'd sit down and we'd go, right, give us an example. And I'd be like, cool, you know, what happens when X? Oh, that's a great example. What happens when Y? Brilliant. And that was testing. So it allowed me to influence the developers, what they thought about testing. But it also allowed me to learn what a really good developer did and how exactly they worked, right? Because there's that whole mindset that developers think differently to testers. And I don't think so. I just think we've got different paths. And that is simply because out of college, I wanted to be a dev. They just went, you're a tester now. And it was the only job I could get. So I took it, right? Obviously. But because we were pairing so much, I was able to learn a lot about developers. I was also able to learn a lot about myself. I was able to learn that actually I don't want to be a software developer because I don't really like coding. It's not for me. It's not that I can't do it. I can do it. I just don't get that joy. You know, a very good friend of mine. He's a fantastic developer, and he'll do this thing where he'll solve a problem with code, and he'll send me a screenshot of it, you know, the code and the problem, and he'll send me a WhatsApp, and he's like, look what I just did, and he's so excited about it, you know. It's like he's just built a thing. I never got that from writing code, but I did get it from breaking code, and I did get it from like tweaking it and trying to find examples, and I did get it from pairing with people. That was my drive, right? So I realized that about myself because I had the ability to, you know, because of this environment. So this got me into coaching. Okay, you're the worst coach this team's ever had, and yeah, trust me, I was the worst coach on a couple of teams a few times. But hey, you know, because we only had 3 testers, right? We had to teach the developers how to test. We had to teach them what exploratory testing was, you know? So we were able to do things like reading Lisa and Janet's book on agile testing, which is an amazing read. Everyone should read it. There's the new one out, just the small little one. Actually, it's downstairs. I should have brought it up, but it's excellent. It's brilliant. And there's another book. Oh, I can't remember who wrote it, but it's called Explore It, from exploratory testing. Absolutely fantastic read. But we were able to do this kind of stuff because we had built in our Kanban board, we had built in with limits. So we had Slack time, and Slack time enabled us to just sit down and read a book, watch a YouTube video on the best new coding, or attend to rewatch a conference talk or something. You know, we had time built into our days for learning. So because of this, I was able to learn how to build quality into software with the developers and how to teach them to do it, right? Now, my manager, who turns out, a funny story, my first one-to-one with him, because my last manager in the company was really bad. So my first one-to-one with him, I had everything filled out. Like I had that, you know, HR document and what you did, and your whole thing and whatever. I had the whole thing filled out, like bit by bit, and I had like reams and reams of documented proof of what I was doing, for fear that he didn't think that I wasn't working. And I brought it all in, and I sat down in front of him, and I was really scared. And I was like, "Yes, here's my report for my last month. Here's my check-in report." And he looked at it, and he goes, "Ha, this is HR bullshit." And he threw it behind him, and he just goes, "How can I help you?" And I was like, "What?" But that was because my manager, he gave me a safe to fail environment where I could become, you know, the best tester possible. But he also encouraged me to try new things. He said, run a retro. He said, organize and run the stand-ups, build the team boards, learn how to do that. So I got to be involved in that. And then he's like, he got me to ask why, which is, I think, the single most important question anyone can ask. I was talking to a product owner I work with in Liberty earlier on today, and he just said, how many projects in the history of software would have saved so much money, or even just been canned, completely not done, if people had asked why at the start? Yeah, that's great, we can do that, but why are we doing this? Where's the business value? Because I had the time, I was able to sit down and, you know, ask these questions and sit with product owners and learn what they did, you know. So this really kind of helped me to learn to deliver customer value, to deliver business value. So I wasn't just a tester writing test automation, or a developer writing development code. We were a blended kind of team that would question why on absolutely everything that came to our team. And, you know, we reject stuff if we couldn't see a business value for it. It was amazing, you know. But because of this, right, because I was only one of 3 testers, I got to hop around a lot of different teams. And when a new team was spun up, I became, along with the other couple of testers, the kind of agile coach, the Scrum Master, if you will. We didn't use Scrum. We used Kanban, BDD, so tools and techniques, lean techniques like that, because we started with Scrum, and we realized the kind of story point was a waste of time, and we'd evolved past it. So we were doing these kind of impact mapping tools and example mapping tools that would help us break down our stories. But when a new team was spun up, they threw me in there, and they're like, you help them build a Kanban board. You help them get their testing up to scratch, you know. So I became this kind of test coach, right? Because I was allowed to question the process, I learned how to make change. And I learned how to run little mini experiments. So, you know, hey, I think a new lane on the board for 3 amigos might be a good idea. Let's try that for 2 weeks, and then we'll talk about it in our retro, and we'll see if it worked or not. So I started doing stuff like that, right? Well, that set me on the journey of coaching. So then I became, I ended up leaving this company. I became an agile coach. And I was doing that for a little while, just for different companies. I'd come in, but I used to come in the guise of a tester. It's funny. I'd go to an interview for a software testing role, and I'd just be like, "You don't need a tester. I know you're looking for a tester. You don't need a tester. You need a test coach. You need someone that'll help your developers learn to test, and turn your automation engineers into developers, and you'll be flying." And so I used to do that with companies, and I really enjoyed it, right? But it was because I had that core understanding and was able to build it up on it. So it turns out that the systems that I was in were wrong, right? College, old school, waterfall, testing. There's no empathy. Do you know what I mean? I thought the developers were, I don't know, a weird name on a Bugzilla. And I think if social media in the last couple of years have taught us as anything, it's very easy to be angry online, right? So it's very, very easy to be like, I'm going to take out my keyboard and I'm just going to be like, no, fuck you. This isn't a bug. This is a thing. I'm going to be very angry and very controlling and happy behind my keyboard. Because there's no face. You're not actually talking to somebody. You're just talking to a Bugzilla ticket. Who cares? You know, there was a lot of that going on in the previous company. And, you know, it can happen in JIRAs. And if we're not communicating, empathy is a key one. So you need to actually work with the person. Now in the virtual world, it's possible you're just going to be online, you know, sitting, talking to each other, but that's cool as well, right? So instead of firing work back over the wall, being like, ah, it's not a bug, this isn't a problem, whatever, we actually got to sit down and talk together and go, oh, actually, do you know what? That is a problem. We can fix it, or it isn't a problem. Brilliant, fantastic. It's not a problem because why? And I realized that a lot of bugs that I had been raising in the past were actually just misunderstandings in the requirements. And because we started collaborating and talking more, those misunderstandings went away. So a lot of bugs just kind of went away as well. It was great. But had I not been pairing with the developers, I'd never have learned this, right? Pairing was absolutely the key, you know? So I was able to teach the developers to test, and they were able to teach me a lot about code, right? Mostly that, yeah, I don't get the same enjoyment out of it as a lot of amazing developers do. So, as Bart says, I can't believe this, but you're here to learn something, right? Okay, you don't want to meet, yeah, Darryn, your life story's great. Who cares? How do I do it, right? Good question. So, you can't get mad at developers if you teach them how to test, okay? Very simple. Step one, remove the wall. Automation is a team activity. Testing is a team activity. It's not your job. It's everybody's job. So you got to pair with the developers, right? Are you writing test code? Yeah, probably. Can you share your test code with the developers? Yeah, probably you can. Can you teach them how you think? Of course you can. Instead of them seeing a problem and straight away solutionizing, can you go, but what happens if X, Y, and Z? Of course. That'll help them then maybe next time, instead of them jumping straight to the solution that they've clearly saw, they can go, wait a minute. Darren's gonna ask me about X, Y, and Z. So maybe I'll think about it first and code it first. That happens. Suddenly you've turned your developer into a tester. He or she, they're gonna help you write test automation. It's gonna be magic. So ways of doing this, I really recommend behavioral driven development. And behavioral driven development is not just, I write given when thens now, so I do behavioral driven development. It's a conversation. It's sitting down and going, can we come up with examples of how this software works? Can we question, let's grab the product owner, let's question the business value. It's those conversations, they're your moneymaker. That's where the real key is. Step two, if you have a Scrum board, I'd suggest setting up a Kanban board, right? And I'd suggest the quickest way, the easiest way, is you get your definition of done from Scrum, and you just order them in the way that the flow of the work would be, you know? Definition of done. Tests must be written. Code must be written. Story must be demoed. Story must be looked at by a tester. Grand, 4 things, great. Order them in your flow. So, okay, well, we're gonna write tests first, then we're gonna write a code, then we're gonna do a code review, then we're gonna have it tested by our tester, and then it's gonna be demoed, and then it's gonna be released. There's your Kanban board, there's your swim lanes. So if you take the definition of done, turn that into a Kanban board, magic, right? And it'll work perfectly in Scrum. You don't have to change any of the Scrum ceremonies. You can leave everything else alone, right? The important rule here, though, is really add work in progress limits, right? Make sure that if a dev hands you work to test, that the developer is not going to go run off and pick up some other work while you're testing. Turn around and be like, please, you're the developer. I'm about to test this. Sit with me. Let's go get a coffee. We'll bring our coffees back to my desk, or virtually we'll hop on a quick Teams call or Zoom call, get a quick coffee for the first 5 minutes, then we'll sit down, we'll get comfortable. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to test this together, right? We're going to write the automation together. So if you start pairing with the developers and let the developers realize that the work isn't actually done until your testing is done, brilliant. And don't be afraid of slack time. Is there a test manager on this call, or like a director of testing, or some sort of higher manager, right? Yeah. Is there someone on this call? Usually I'd get a few sheepishly put their hand up at this point in the crowd. Just gonna say, don't be afraid of slack time. It's okay if somebody isn't doing work. That's fine. Maybe their work is being tested by somebody. Maybe they're pairing with somebody. Maybe they need 10 minutes. It's fine. 100% productivity is a lie. It doesn't exist. You want to focus on quality and outcomes over 100%. That developer isn't working. He must be working harder. It's nonsense. Stop it, right? Any managers here, don't do that. Bad. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace slack time, right? Also, get rid of your bug tracking tools. This is a fun one. Just delete them. Just get rid of them. Replace them with conversations. Hello, I found a bug. Let us chat about it. I'm not going to raise a bug because you're never going to read it. And if you do read it, you're not going to understand what I'm trying to say anyway, because I'm not going to type it out correctly. So let's have a quick chat about it, right? I used to come into companies and I used to love doing this. You'd find a test manager in the company and be like, can I see your bug tracking tool? And he'd be like, yeah, of course. Very proud of his bug tracking tool. He's had it years. It's great. Cool. How many bugs are in there? Oh, we've got 150 active bugs right now, but it's down. It used to be 130, 100. She used to be 180 last week. But we close to 30. It's great. Like cool. 150 active bugs. Yeah. And how many of them are currently in production? Oh, all of them. All of them. They've all been released to production months ago. I'm like, grand. So they're not bugs then. What? Well, there's something you found 3 or 4 months ago and then decided to release anyway, so it doesn't matter. Delete them. And they get really confused. I'm like, just delete them. Just delete them. You're never going to fix them. They're just going to sit there. They're not actually bugs because no customer has complained about them. So just delete them, right? Why not? I know of a team, and this is a true story. I know of a team that decided and they didn't have many. They had like 30 bugs open, right, from something that was live for a couple of months. And they said, no, we're not doing any more work. We've managed to halt production. We've told sales to be quiet. We've told product to be quiet. We are going to spend the next couple of sprints fixing all these bugs. And they did. They got their bugs count to 0. What happened? Customer rang them. Hey, you've changed. You just did a release there. Yeah, we fixed the bug. Yeah, it's great. It's a great release. Like, could you put that back in? Like, what do you mean put that back in? Well, yeah, we spotted that bug months ago when you released it, but we didn't want to tell you, so we just built a workaround on our system. It's been working for the last couple of months for us, but now that you fixed it, you've broken our system. It's going to cost us money to replace that, so could you just put that back in? So they actually had to go back and put a bug back in because it had been live for so long that the customers were already using it. So just get rid of it. Just get rid of it. Delete them. It can be scary, but just get rid of it, right? And make sure that testers are part of the team, right? But you can do that as a tester. You can go and you can go, okay, today I'm going to pair with the developers. Simple. Now, this is my most controversial slide, and I really like it. What if I told you testers and developers are the same? Let's go back to the start, shall we? I asked you who did computer science in college or who did some sort of computing degree. Right? Now I know some people have done various degrees and ended up in software. Wasn't really the point. The point was, I'm a delivery lead now, but I used to be a software tester. I was a software tester. I was a developer for a little while, test automation engineer, agile tester, agile test coach, scrum master. I've worn many hats, but my point is, I started out wanting to be a software developer. If we realize that 90% of the people who end up in test probably have the same degree that the guy beside them has, we're the same, right? They're very, very similar jobs, right? And I'm going to go one step further and go, if you're a test automation engineer, you're not a test automation engineer. You're a software developer. You're writing code, right? What's the difference between that and if you paired with a programmer or an actual developer or whatever for a couple of weeks? Why couldn't you write production code? Of course you could. It's the same thing. So I'd suggest blurring the two even, sorry, blurring, jeez, half a Guinness is kicking in already. Blurring the two. Can you get the test automation code into the same code base as the main code, which should be there anyway? Brilliant. You're going to pair with the developer. Can you start writing code? Of course you can. You might be not as good as a senior developer, but fine, you'll learn. So instead of arguing that testers are different to developers, I used to go to test conferences. I still do, by the way. I love test conferences. I was just at Agile Testing Days a couple of weeks ago, and it's one of the best places in the world. I highly recommend everyone go there. It's the Glastonbury of software testing conferences, and or agile testing conference. I really enjoy it. It's amazing. Unicorn land. If anyone has been, they'll understand. But instead of trying to argue that I am a tester and I am a different person to a developer, you're not. Find the similarities between both roles, because it's empathy. It's the best way we're going to go forward, right? I'm working in Liberty right now. They don't have any testers. No testers, zero. The developers are doing the testing. When I started, I was able to be like, right, guys, okay, let's do some behavioral driven development techniques. Let's do some example mapping techniques. So now when we get new features, we just example map everything out, which includes writing the test cases, which includes the developers going away and automating them. So, like once developers have the key tricks when they've read Explore It or, they've read a couple of books, and then it's fine. Everyone can do this job. Realize that everyone started as a scared young person who just came out of college and was afraid of all the big adults in the room, okay? Realize that that's everybody, right? Realize that we all have bad days. We all have imposter syndrome. We all have that little voice in our head that just goes, you're crap, aren't you? Even though you're having the best day ever, right? Everyone just has that little voice, right? Realize that that's there, right? So we don't need to separate. We don't need to have that divide anymore, okay? We all went through stages where we were just hacking stuff in college and hoping we passed our exams. So I'd say empathy goes a long, long way, right? If there's one thing that I've learned from my journey as a software tester is really that. Alrighty, that is me. I like to say I explained about my hair already, but I didn't. I need a haircut. Basically, what happened, right, was my local barber around the corner. It closed, and I'm not bothered going to town. So yeah, maybe Friday. Maybe but thank you everybody for listening, and hope you enjoyed. And is there any questions for me?
Yeah, thank you, Darryn, for the presentation. Before people start to write the questions into the chat, I would like to ask one thing from the let's say managerial point of view. When you don't have a backtracking tool but your client requests to the bugs to be written somewhere. How do you manage this?
They're just stories, backlog. They're the most important stories, because if a customer has found a bug, okay, so you're never not going to have no bugs, right? You'll have no bugs from a development point of view, but if a customer turns to you and goes, this is a bug, we want it fixed, you do it. That's your most important story. That's the first thing on your backlog. That becomes a story. It goes through the usual. Stuff. In fact, you're going to write automation around that, and you're gonna really test that because a customer has found that. So that's to me, that becomes it's not even a bug. It just becomes your next release, and you want that out as quick as possible, right?
Thank you very much, Darryn, once again for your presentation, and I think that Julius is already prepared for the second presentation, so I will end this session and we will start the other session just after that. So bye for now, and we will see each other.
Thank you very much.